Revolutionary greetings, comrades. Today, we are joined by Comrade Ian Bitos. He is the Acting Secretary of International Affairs of the Zimbabwe Communist Party, and also our National Commissar. Comrade Ian Bitos has vast experience on international matters. We've invited him to deliver a political lecture for about 15 to 20 minutes. After he's delivered the lecture, you will then be able to ask questions writing in the comment section because the format that we are using is not interactive, but later on we will then upload the video. Then you write in the comment section your questions, which will then re-invite Comrade Ian Bitos to come and respond to these questions. Comrade Bitos, over to you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Comrade GS. I'm going to be talking about the Auschwitz commemoration, which we've just seen for this year. It was the 80th anniversary. On 27th of January 1945, the Soviet Red Army liberated Auschwitz, the complex of concentration camps and extermination camps established by Nazi Germany on the soil of Poland during the Second World War. When we talk about extermination camps, we mean that was where they had gas chambers which were used to exterminate people, especially Jews, but also Roma, otherwise known as gypsies, on an industrial scale. On 25th of January 2025, there was a commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, except that the liberators, the Russians, were not invited. True, the USSR is no more, but the people of the Russian Federation, the memory of the Great Patriotic War runs very deep. The successors to the Red Army is the Army of the Russian Federation. Every year in Russia, Victory Day is celebrated on 9th of May. This was the day in 1945 when Nazi Germany finally surrendered. Recently, Donald Trump said, "We must never forget that Russia helped us to win World War II at the cost of almost 60 million lives." What confusion. Firstly, generally accepted figures tell us that 60 million is the total of lives lost in the Second World War. But of those, 27 million, which is nearly half, were of Soviet citizens, both military and civilian. Secondly, and more importantly, it was the USA which assisted the Soviet Union, not the other way around. Arms and other supplies from the USA contributed to the Soviet victory, as did the Allied intervention in North Africa and Italy, and the D-Day landings, which happened in France from Britain in 1944. From that time, from the time that the USSR entered the war in June 1941, it never engaged less than 70% of Axis forces, that is Germany and its allies, and 75% of all Axis forces killed in action died at the hands of the Red Army. Much is made of arms and other wartime necessities donated by the USA and UK during the World War, but this never exceeded more than 10% of the total. Soviet weapons production made all the difference. As J.V. Stalin said in 1945, the war was won in the factories. The biggest battle in human history was the Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted from July 1942 until February 1943. At its height, there were more than 1 million men fighting on each side. In the 6 months long battle, more than 1 million men died on each side. The biggest tank battle in human history took place in Kursk in June 1943. Around 3,000 tanks on each side took part. Like Stalingrad, it was a Soviet victory. The recent attack on the Kursk region by the Kiev regime ruling Ukraine at present was obviously symbolic. The Jewish origin of the Ukrainian President Zelensky masks the fact that the state machinery, in particular the army and police, are in the hands of Ukrainian Nazi elements also present during the Second World War. Let me explain. Around 4 million Ukrainians fought in the Red Army, and about 250,000 were Soviet partisans operating behind enemy lines. But around 200,000, mostly from the western Ukrainian provinces Galicia and Volhynia, fought with the German Nazis either directly as soldiers of the Galician SS or in the Ukrainian People's Army led by Stepan Bandera. These Ukrainian Nazi elements distinguished themselves by mass killings of Jews and Poles and were favored as concentration camp guards in the extermination camps like Auschwitz. Even the Germans noted their extreme brutality. So it's Nazi elements who are now controlling the state machinery of today's Ukraine. Some people will say that Ukraine, like Russia, was part of the USSR. This is true. But the current regime has banned commemoration of the Second World War victory. It has destroyed all Soviet war memorials and made Nazi collaborator Stepan Bandera a national hero, placing statues of him all around Ukraine in place of Soviet war memorials. That the current Ukrainian government, represented by Zelensky, was invited to the Auschwitz commemoration is a clear and deliberate desecration of the memories of all who died in the gas chambers, mainly Jews and Roma, gypsies that is, otherwise known as gypsies, and of the Red Army soldiers who liberated Auschwitz and ultimately the rest of Poland. The Nazis had clearly stated that Poles were Untermenschen, undermen, and in the face of the Nazi victory would initially be used as serfs, then like Jews would be exterminated. They actually said this in writing in their propaganda, which is possible to get hold of. They said that they wanted to clear the lands in the east for German settlement. But in the first stages, yeah, they would just use the labor of these people. The racism of many Poles today has been clearly demonstrated by interviews of the murder of Chris Hani, Janusz Walusz. In a recent interview on Polish television, Walusz told the interviewer that blacks are only suited to be workers under white bosses. This is the man who was released after serving a number of years in prison and is now back in Poland and has become a hero of Polish reactionaries. Then Germany was present at the Auschwitz commemoration. Known for systematic genocide of the Herero people around 1910 in what is now Namibia, the Germans went on to commit genocide against Jews and Roma during the Second World War. They pretend to be sorry, but have supported their old allies, the Ukrainian Nazis, against their old enemy, Russia. In addition, they continue to support Zionist genocide against the Palestinians. So how sorry are the Germans? And yet they were there at this commemoration. Finally, the Zionists. The Zionist movement had long sought to make a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Around 1900, Jews were a tiny minority in Palestine. But during the early years of the 20th century, Jewish immigration into Palestine increased. Nevertheless, when the State of Israel was formed in 1948, Jews were only about 1/3 of the population. Systematically, since then, the Zionists have removed the Palestinians from their ancestral homeland, leading to the recent and ongoing genocide in Gaza. The recent Auschwitz commemoration then seems more like a celebration of genocide when we study who was invited and who was left out. That's the statement that I want to make, because to me, the whole thing of the Auschwitz commemoration was revolting and twisted. I don't know what words to use. The followers of Nazi Germany were there. The creators of genocide, even ongoing genocide, were there. But the Russians who liberated Auschwitz were blocked from attending. So anyway, I'd like to leave it now for people to ask questions.
Thanks, Comrade Commissar. As I said earlier on, that we invite people to write in the comment section. But a question from me. President Donald Trump has been saying that during his campaign that the Russian war was not going to happen if he was president. What is your attitude to Donald Trump? I saw that he has cut aid in Ukraine. Do you foresee an agreement being reached under the presidency of Donald Trump in Eastern Europe?
Donald Trump is a very unpredictable person. I do agree that if Trump had been president, this war would not have started, because in some ways he has a more realistic attitude to Russia and major powers than the Democrats. And without a doubt, this war in Ukraine was started by the Democrats or Democratic presidents. First of all, in 2014, the coup, which took out the democratically elected pro-Russian government of Ukraine, was removed by a coup when Obama was president. And what we now know is that the architect of the coup, the chief architect, was Victoria Nuland, who was then Deputy Secretary of State. Secretary of State in the United States is the foreign minister. And she was actually there at Maidan Square with, by the way, former Republican candidate, John McCain, who actually addressed the crowd. So this coup, which brought in this anti-Russian government, was manipulated under the leadership of the Democrats. Then the people of Crimea and Donbass did not want to be under this regime, which was clearly led by Nazi elements. Yes, they were not the majority, but they had control of the police and the army, and still do. And then the other thing that people are confused about with Zelensky is, after some change of government following the coup in 2019, Zelensky was elected as a peace candidate. 70% of Ukrainians voted for Zelensky because he said, we will negotiate peace with Russia, because Russia had supported to some degree the Donbass republics, had actually taken part, had actually taken over Crimea, because the majority of Crimean people were pro-Russian anyway, which they showed in the vote that was taken. More than 90% did not want to be part of Ukraine, and actually, by the way, had said that earlier. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, the Crimea, which was an autonomous republic, said, no, we don't want to be part of Ukraine, we want to be part of the Russian Federation. And the majority of people supported that. So we've had a very big misrepresentation. So going back to the question, yeah, Donald Trump had recognized that Russia was not to be played with, and his friend Elon Musk has also made similar sounds. At the same time, Trump is very aggressive in terms of supporting supporting the Zionists, of want to attack Iran, even of wanting some kind of attack on Israel. And then you see, as Marxists, we have to also make a class analysis. We have to look at the economic factors which brought Trump into power. And they break down like this. The neoliberal agenda started in the United States with Ronald Reagan in 1981. Now, part of the neoliberal, the two sides to the neoliberal agenda, one is monetarism, and the other is that, yeah, we don't want any state-controlled industry. Now, in terms of monetarism, which is putting money before production, this has been disastrous for the USA. There was a meltdown in 2008 of the banking system, of which even then China, for instance, helped them pull out of that because they were worried about the total collapse of the system internationally. But they didn't see the writing on the wall. They didn't reindustrialize. And now the United States has gone down even more. So what Trump and Musk have recognized is the need to reindustrialize the United States, but he's done it in a very crude way. He now wants to put trade tariffs even on his enemies, even on the two adjoining countries, Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. So he's alienated the whole of Europe. So although we can see the logic in some of the things that he's doing, the way he's going about it is just, just very crude. And he still has the same thing that the Democrats have, and that is that he imagines that the United States can order the rest of the world what to do. So yeah, he may want to pull out of Russia, but some of the things he's suggesting really are not acceptable. For instance, with the Ukraine war, there were two issues for Russia. One was that under the right-wing government of Ukraine, they were trying to ban the Russian language. And eastern, southern Ukraine has always been Russian-speaking. Even Kiev, the capital, has been more Russian-speaking than Ukrainian-speaking. So language and culture was one of the issues, and what was in the early stages, the Donbass republics, which declared independence, the agreement of 2014, 2015, made at Minsk, was that the Donbass republics would remain in the Ukraine, but would be autonomous republics, as happens in Russia, as happened during the Soviet Union. For instance, we know that the Chechen fighters are some of the best in the Russian army, but Chechnya, where they come from, is an autonomous republic. They're mainly Muslim, but they're a republic within the Russian Federation. So the idea was for the Donbass republics, Lugansk and Donetsk, was that they should be autonomous republics, Russian-speaking, within Ukraine. Now, the Nazi elements refused that and started attacking the people, bombarding even blocks of flats where ordinary people lived. They were very cruel. And the Donbass republics were fighting on their own for 8 years before eventually Russia sent in the troops of the special military operation. And even then, they were hoping for a settlement. Now, the other thing, which is perhaps more important, that Russia was opposed to, was that they told NATO, we will not put up with any nuclear base in Ukraine. Ukraine must be neutral. That it threatens our sovereignty, it threatens our identity, because NATO is not just it's not a defensive organization, it's very aggressive. So if you join NATO, you want to be part of aggression against other nations. And we've seen this. We saw it in Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. So we don't want any NATO bases. If you're a reasonable person, you don't want any NATO bases next to you. And especially ones where nuclear weapons are in quick striking distance of your capital. And the Russians, even Gorbachev, who was a fool, actually made an agreement that they would allow the unification of Germany so long as NATO didn't move east of Germany. That was what was agreed. But the West reneged on that agreement. So you've got this thing that they want to move eastward. And then in relation to this Auschwitz commemoration, yeah, they're working with Nazi elements. And I say Nazi advisedly, they're not neo-Nazis. These small groups have been there since the Second World War. They haven't changed. They're the same organizations which have been there, but they were suppressed under the Soviet Union.
Okay, Comrade Bidos, because of time, we really appreciate. Let us end it here. But the viewers heard your voice; they didn't see your face. As we conclude, if you can just put on your camera so that they can identify this comrade who was present in this excellent lecture. Like we said, comrades, please write in the comment section your questions. We will once again invite Comrade Ian Bidos as we discuss the situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I've been seeing some clips about what former president of Tanzania has been saying about the Eastern Congo, what former President Thabo Mbeki has been saying. I've been speaking to some Congolese who are members of the African Diaspora Forum. So we're doing our research on what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We will have a discussion. Otherwise, Comrade Ian Bidos, thank you so much for this lecture. We will invite you to respond to the questions which will be posted by comrades. Otherwise, have a great day, Comrade Ian Bidos.
Thank you very much indeed. I put my video off earlier, by the way, because we're having a problem with connection. Sometimes on these things, if you have the video as well as the chat, you can't hear the voice, breaks up. So that was the reason.
Thank you.
Now
so
you can see my
Okay, thank
face.
you so much. Right, salute, Amandla, comrade.
Okay.
Bye.